Welcome, true seekers of history. We are taught that total unity is our greatest strength. But what if this exact ideal was the core of an ancient, terrifying dictatorship? Today, we journey to Shinar's plain to uncover the dark truth behind the Babel Tower. Was it truly a grand monument to human ambition, or a prison stripping away free will? Let us decode why the divine chose to shatter this empire, saving us from our perfection. According to ancient texts, humanity emerged from the Great Flood with a single, shared language. They settled on the vast, flat plains of Shinar, driven by a powerful desire to stay together. Instead of spreading across the earth, they chose to build a massive, centralized, and grand city. At the heart of this ancient metropolis stood the foundation of a colossal ziggurat. The project was a marvel of early engineering, using an endless supply of baked mud bricks. Workers moved with perfect precision, mixing black asphalt to bind the heavy blocks tightly together. Thousands of hands worked in absolute harmony, driven by a singular collective vision. Their clear goal was to build a tower that would pierce the heavens and make a great name for themselves. Looking closely at this undertaking, we see an astonishing display of human effort. The air was thick with the gray dust of constant labor and the roaring heat of endless brick kilns. There was no conflict, no misunderstanding, and no delay in executing the grand design. From a modern view, this absolute cooperation seems like the ultimate triumph of our kind. They surrendered their individual desires to serve relentless progress of the great high tower. The rhythmic pounding of hammers echoed across the flat plains like the heartbeat of a giant beast. They believed that together they could conquer nature and secure an eternal legacy on Earth. Every brick placed upon the structure showed their unbreakable and total solidarity. But underneath this flawless surface of shared labor, a much darker reality was taking root. Records suggest this massive undertaking required total submission from every citizen. A society speaking with only one voice leaves no room for any dissenting opinions. When millions act as a single entity, they become perfect tools for authoritarian rule. The workers of Shinar traded individual freedom for the illusion of ultimate safety. They were no longer distinct humans, but merely identical, voiceless cogs in a vast machine. The majestic tower climbing towards the clouds was built upon the crushed souls of weary workers. As the structure grew taller, the heavy burden on the laborers became deeply unbearable. Their unified language was not a bridge for empathy, but a strict chain binding them to one purpose. Let us step into the dark, suffocating shadows cast by this massive, awe-inspiring monument. Down here, away from the light, the terrifying reality of the Babel project is revealed. Workers struggled under the agonizing weight of endless clay bricks and burning asphalt buckets. Cruel overseers patrolled the high scaffolding, wielding leather whips with brutal efficiency. Their command was absolute, demanding strict obedience to complete the unified state vision. Exhausted men fell into the mud, bodies broken by the relentless pace of forced construction. But the massive machine did not stop. Another nameless laborer simply took the place of the fallen. The chilling slogan, "Let us make a name for ourselves," echoed endlessly through the dark corridors. It was a mantra of pure arrogance, replacing reverence for the divine with self-worship. Ask yourself, if a culture forces total uniformity over life, is it truly great? The tragic truth of Babel is that it functioned as a massive, open-air concentration camp. By forcing a single language and mindset, the rulers eliminated all forms of rebellion. There was nowhere to run and nowhere to hide on the vast, completely flat plains of ancient Shinar. The shared language was a potent weapon, ensuring state propaganda was grasped by everyone. Every conversation, every whispered thought was instantly monitored and controlled by the state. The ziggurat was not just a building, it was a towering monument of extreme tyranny. It cast an oppressive shadow over the workers, constantly reminding them of their smallness. Modern analysis shows that such absolute conformity is deeply unnatural for us. When mankind possesses one strict perspective, its capacity for evil becomes limitless. Without diverse voices to challenge the authority, moral boundaries dissolve into dust. The builders believed their technological prowess made them equal to the divine creator. They sought to create a perfect, enclosed system where human flaws were eradicated by force. True perfection cannot be manufactured through brutal oppression and the erasure of souls. The baked mud bricks were as identical and lifeless as the weary laborers who carried them. The dark asphalt mirrored the toxic ideology holding their grim society together. In their desperate quest to make a great name, they were actively destroying their humanity. The vast tower was not a stairway to heaven, but a descent into totalitarian darkness. If this proto-empire were allowed to reach its full potential, it would consume the entire world. It would have rapidly established a global regime where freedom of thought was entirely extinct. The deep danger of Babel lay not in its height, but in its terrifying homogenization. A culture lacking internal friction or debate is merely a well-organized march toward death. The relentless pounding continued, echoing the brutal suppression of the human spirit. The cruel overseers cracked their whips, entirely blind to the consequences of their ambition. They were building a world where the state was God, and the individual was just disposable clay. At this exact moment of absolute unity, the heavens reacted to the growing threat. From high above the turbulent clouds, the divine presence surveyed the massive undertaking below. The scriptural texts state that God came down to see the city and the tower the humans were building. This was not a gaze of fear, but a profound anxiety for the fragile future of mankind. God looked upon the unified crowd, recognizing the destructive potential of their dark work. If, as one people, speaking the same language, they begin this, nothing will be impossible. This thought highlights a terrifying truth about unchecked, relentless human ambition. Unity without moral restraint is the perfect recipe for engineering a dark nightmare. The towering walls of Babel were not designed to protect humanity, but to enclose them. If this dark project succeeded, there would be no refuge left on Earth for those who disagreed. Divine intervention was necessary to break the iron grip of this early dictatorship. A sudden, overwhelming shift in the atmosphere descended upon the construction site. The clouds parted briefly, not to unleash lightning, but to deliver a subtle, profound change. God did not send another devastating flood to wipe out the defiant builders of the earth. He did not hurl down fire to scorch the oppressive mud brick walls back into the barren dirt. Instead, he chose a precise method to dismantle their rigid, unified society. The true target was not the tower, but the invisible bonds holding the people together. By confounding their language, absolute control of the overseers was instantly broken. This was an act of surgical precision, targeting the core of totalitarian power. Without a shared tongue, the oppressive orders could no longer be seamlessly transmitted and obeyed. The grand engine of the state violently ground to a halt, choked by sudden misunderstanding. This divine act proves that true human progress requires a diversity of distinct voices. A society forcing everyone to think the same way is destined to utterly collapse. The ziggurat could not intimidate a population unable to grasp the threats. His action was a strike against the dangerous centralization of human authority. The psychological grip of the empire was shattered into thousands of disconnected fragments. Staring in utter confusion, the spell of absolute conformity was finally broken. The era of synchronization ended, paving the way for a divided but freer world. In a chaotic instant, the mechanical hum of the construction site died away completely. Men who had worked side by side for years suddenly found themselves staring into the eyes of strangers. An order shouted by an overseer was now perceived as a meaningless, aggressive noise. Frustration boiled over into panic as the illusion of collective unity collapsed. Tools were violently thrown to the dusty ground, and the once harmonious workforce fractured apart. The towering ziggurat, a symbol of arrogance, was abandoned to the elements. Unable to cooperate, the builders turned their backs on the dark, centralizing city. They scattered across the ancient earth, migrating in factions, carrying seeds of diversity. The terrifying incident at Babel was never meant to be a cruel, vengeful curse. Instead, it was a profound divine rescue mission to save us from our own perfection. Cultural and linguistic diversity was born to strictly protect the fragile human soul. It prevents our race from destroying itself under a brutal authoritarian rule.
We were promised greatness.
The scattered tribes journeyed outward, forming completely new cultures and beautiful traditions. We learn that true unity is truly never found in forced conformity or dark suppression. Authentic harmony only flourishes when we respect our diverse and unique voices. The crumbling ruins of Babel remained as a silent, powerful warning for generations. It stands against any empire attempting to replace the divine with absolute control. Building a great, legendary name means absolutely nothing if the human spirit dies. Mankind was finally saved from totalitarian doom, yet they were deeply lost and scattered. Wandering the ancient wilderness, the fractured human race desperately needed a new compass. To guide the scattered nations, the divine decided to begin again with just one chosen man. He selected a faithful individual, calling him out from the wealthy city of Ur. However, the ultimate test of this man's devotion would be absolutely horrifying. He would be commanded to perform an unthinkable act of cruelty upon his beloved child. What was this dark and terrifying request? Discover the shocking truth in Episode 5. Does total cultural unity bring true peace? Or does it pave the way for a dark tyranny? Share your thoughts below. The greatest historical lessons hide within our misunderstandings. If you found this journey valuable, please like, share, and subscribe for more epic history.